Hello everybody, welcome. Welcome everyone. People are joining. So we give it a minute or two. Apologies, we started a minute later. We kept you waiting, but hopefully it's going to be worth the 1 minute wait. Great, we've got quite a few people already. Feel free to, yes, thank you. Hi Kai, nice to see you in the chat. I could see some names that I recognize, which is great. Yeah, feel free to say hi in the chat where you're from. So hello from me from Malvern, Worcestershire in the UK. We've got lots of panelists today. They will introduce themselves in a moment. I'll give it another minute for people to join because I know it usually takes a couple of minutes for everyone to get in, and then we can start. We've got hi from Paris, from Sweden. Yes, we've got yes, and Simon, we've got already a first question about questions. Great. Both chat and Q&A are good for questions. So I'll this is my usual housekeeping. So yes, we've got both Q&A and chat. I will be monitoring both during the session, so whichever you prefer to use. If you use chat, it shows up straight away to everyone else, so you might get an answer from a fellow audience member, which is great. If any of you in the audience know the answers, please again join the conversation. Q&A, those can be submitted also at any time during our conversation, our panel. I will be monitoring those. Some of our panelists might answer you directly within the Q&A option. We might take some of those questions actually to answer live in the conversation, depending on complexity of the question itself. And hopefully we will get to all of them during our panel. So yeah, anytime, don't wait until end of the conversation, because this is all about questions and answers. Really, we're going to have a discussion here. So at any point when you have a question, please post it. You can post it right now. And if anything, you get any ideas during the conversation, then yes, please do. So yeah, that's really the only rule, just Q&A or chat. So yes, I think, yeah, we've 4 past. I can still see people joining, but that's all right. We are recording this as well. So if you want to revisit any of the questions that were asked, any of the points of the conversation, you will be able to do that. You will be able to access the recording via the same link you had to access it. And then in a couple of weeks' time, we will also publish this on our YouTube channel. So it will be available for you to revisit, or if you need to leave early as well, you can come back to it about an hour or so after we finish. Okay, so I think we can start. So officially welcome everyone to our webinar. This one is a panel discussion, and we will be talking about Java 21. So I would like our panelists to introduce themselves to you. In this little image that you can see on your screen right now, I couldn't fit everyone, unfortunately. It would be very tight fit if we tried. So I hope that I'll give the room to our panelists now to introduce themselves, and then we can start our conversation. So Lukman, why don't we start with you?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Hello from Accra, Ghana. My name is Lukman, and I'm the technical writer for Payara. As most of you know, we've been having a lot of conversations in webinars. So yeah, I'm Lukman.
Great. Andrew, I'll be calling you out.
Yeah, sure. Hello, yes, I'm Andrew Pilaj from Malvern, same as Dominica, just different house. I'm one of the Java developers here, working on the actual server itself. I've been here for coming up to 10 years now, so I know a lot of the history of the server and hopefully where it's going. I'd hope I do.
We hope you do. Thank you, Andrew. So Andrew is definitely the right person to ask questions to. Hopefully he will have the answers. And Petr, how about you?
Hi, Petr from Prague. I am Java developer working on the server as well, and I was implementing majority of the concurrency 3.1 in Payara, so interested in the concurrency stuff.
Great, thank you. And Dipendra.
Hi everyone. So I'm Dipendra from Delhi, India, and I take care of a lot of service tickets for Payara, as well as bug fixes. So yeah.
Great. Thank you everyone. So yes, we've got quite a good team here with a couple of with different backgrounds, a little bit different backgrounds, but what brings us together is obviously Payara, Java, and Jakarta EE. So, and this is what we're going to talk about today. So Lukman will give you a bit of a background of why we actually here and why we're talking about this. Why is it important? So over to you, Lukman.
Yes, nice. So Java 21 is out. Finally is out. Arguably the most talked about, the most discussed, the most blogged, most written about release of Java since I think Java 8 or so. And also the most impactful is finally out. And we are all happy as developers. We are always happy with shiny new things, shiny new APIs and all that. And as Jakarta EE developers, we all have questions about the 21 release. What can I use? What's in it for me? What's supported? When is support for those coming? Can I use this in my application? What's the impact of that? We have all these questions surrounding Java 21 because Jakarta EE, as we all know, is a managed runtime. A runtime like Payara manages all the overheads for us, so we don't need to do anything. All we need to do is focus on delivering business value through the Jakarta EE APIs. So then we start wondering, with this shiny release, what can we start using immediately? What can we be using, or what can we use down the line and all that? And as we've gathered here with the core team members here, you can ask all your questions and all your curiosities should be answered. So we have a number of questions, and at any point, as Dominica mentioned, you can also ask your questions. So today, we are just here to celebrate Java 21 release for us as Jakarta EE developers and see which of the candy we can start eating today and which we can wait to start eating in the future. So over to you, Dominica.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That was good introduction, and I hope we're all in the same place here. So yeah, I do have a bunch of questions, and we had some questions that that some of you who are attending today actually submitted with the registration, and we have some topics that we thought are important to talk about in this context. But like I said before, do add your questions to the list at any point, and I'll get to them. So I'll jump right in. There is no particular sort of order to those questions topically. They're just about Java 21 in the context of Jakarta EE. So the first question is, how will virtual threads affect the performance and scalability of my Jakarta EE applications? And whoever wants to answer can go.
I think Peter will be the first person to start answering since he's the
just clicking the
principal architect of the concurrency implementation. So Peter?
Sorry, didn't get the question.
Yeah, I am actually going to type it in the chat as well for everyone else. How will virtual threads affect the performance and scalability of my Jakarta EE applications?
Yeah. Okay. The virtual threads won't affect the application immediately because Jakarta applications shouldn't use the threads by themselves. They should use the ones which are provided by the application server. But we are currently working on a implementation of or usage of virtual threads in Payara in several places. And one of them is and it will be part of the next Jakarta EE version, the ability to use the managed executor service with the virtual threads. And what is to be expected is improved throughput, so that there should be possible to start much more threads and concurrent executions than it used so far, especially if they include some waiting, like database connection on some REST calls. So far we were limited to the platform threads, say up to tens of them, say 100 of threads. But with virtual threads, we will be able to run 10,000 concurrent requests, and it will depend only on the say on the speed of the responses of the REST. So it should improve the throughput and say responsiveness of the server itself. And the second part is that we are currently working on and investigating the usage in the web servlets and this web processing. So this again should be able to increase the amount of requests the service is able to handle. And this is currently under investigation and some early implementations. That's my answer.
Great, thank you, Pet. No, I think that was a quite extensive answer. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add. We've got quite a few questions to cover, so I might move over to the next one. We do have one question in the Q&A, but I can see Andrew is typing the answer, so I'll leave it for now. But once we have the answers added to the Q&A, then anyone who is a part of this webinar can actually see the answers as well. So if you want to have a look occasionally at the Q&A tab in your view, then have a look as well, because you can find some more questions answered on there. So yeah, thank you, Pet, for that. And then I've got the next question. How can I use pattern matching for Switch to improve the readability and maintainability of my Jakarta EE code? So that's quite a specific question. I'll type it into the chat. I'm not sure which one of you would like to take that one. I'll type
I
it
think
in.
pattern matching is one of the, if I should say, syntactic sugars that is part of this release, and it's designed to reduce, first of all, cognitive load when you are reading code. So you really don't have to think a lot when you are reading somebody's code using pattern matching and such. So it's one of those syntactic sugars that you should be able to use it right away without impacting anything, as it is mostly within the Java runtime space and doesn't really have any deep impact on the underlying Jakarta EE runtime, unlike something like concurrency that has much more impact with the underlying Jakarta EE runtime. Pattern matching is, I consider it a syntactic sugar that you should be able to use it to create much more readable code. But perhaps Dipendra or Andrew would have something else to say about that.
Yeah, I could say some things of, yeah, so they've been iterating on Switch for a while now. It's not just suddenly a big bang into 21. Here's all these new things. They've been working on it gradually for a while, adding things like the expression statements and things, and the non-fall through, because it was originally always just a fall through and you had to stick your brakes everywhere. But it's getting better. It's becoming a much more English with things like the when clause. So you're not just constantly having to embed ifs everywhere. You can just kind of case this when this. Case same thing, but when this. So it's becoming quite nice to do. And there's lots of other little things in there as well, because they've been adding, obviously, well, not necessarily obviously, but I think it's a question we were looking to tackle later, is they've added the patterns matching for records, and that's already into this, which makes that a bit nicer as well. And the enums is looking a lot nicer as well. It's a lot better.
Yeah, Dee, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that Andrew has covered pretty much all the aspects. So yes, the business logic that is typically written in Jakarta EE will be far more readable, especially for complex scenarios, which up to now had been, let's say, using pattern matching or subclasses in their return types. All those things can be much more readable now, especially if you go into using records. It is very nice and it is much more compact, and I think that's a win for all of the Jakarta EE developers.
Great, thank you all of you. Yeah, and you mentioned that already, Andrew, so that we can move on to that next question about the record patterns. So how can we use the record patterns to work more efficiently with records in Jakarta EE apps? So that's sort of continuation to what we were talking about. I posted the question in the chat as well.
Yeah, so as I previously said, it's a lot more. It's just shorter to use it. Previously, it was quite verbose. In the end, it does only save you a couple lines here and there, or a couple characters here and there. But when you start, particularly with records, when you're starting to get into nested things, as if you read any article, that tends to be where they actually say the advantage is. And yes, that is where the advantage is of those couple lines of those couple lines or those extra characters. They breed when you're starting to do nesting, and suddenly it's not just a couple lines, it's a couple 8 lines, and suddenly you're having to embed things into your 8 levels of indentation. And while I love my indentation, it starts getting a bit messy. So it just helps with that kind of more complex stuff and having to do that. And when you start combining it with var, you can really start doing some swanky stuff where your patterns won't necessarily break just because you change the types that you pass into it. Obviously, you've got to make sure it actually works, but it means you won't have to necessarily update every single place that you've used your code if you've got that. Yeah. You've also, as an extra little thing, the records, and therefore the pattern matching for records, for EE11, that is going to start coming in as well. So for your EE10 things, as previously answered, we're going to look at adding the Java 21 support for Payara 6, so you can use those features within your application, but the actual EE integration won't be coming till 11, as in Jakarta EE 11, not Payara 11. That's a way. That's a ways away. I'll be an old man by then. It's making it the records, and therefore the pattern matching is making its way into at least a couple of the specifications. Bean validation, or soon to just be called validation, is another one of those specifications, which is changing its name, and persistence is the other main one that I'm aware of, where they're adding it. Great, so efficiency is saved in typing, not necessarily in actual speed, not that I'm aware of anyway.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. We've got a question from one of the audience members. I know Petr is responding to the other question, so we'll leave that for now. So when an application containers switch to use virtual threads, which should increase throughput, how does it impact the performance of our database? Do we need to adjust our connection pool, for example? That's in the Q&A if any of you want to refer back to that question, read it again.
I think when it comes to database, it's very complex and it's always it depends situation. If your data modeling right off the bat is a problem, nothing can save you in terms of performance. You need to really fix that. And there are a number of factors that can impact the performance of the database. Of course, you can do some things in the background thread so as to not to block the current executing thread and all of that. But in the end, it's always an it depends situation. Yes, threading in general and virtual threads in particular can help in some ways. But when it comes to databases in particular, there are many factors. First of all, starting from how you model your data. I've seen companies that model data for relational databases as if they are going to be using NoSQL databases. And then in production, there's constantly performance problems. So in these cases, no amount of threading or whatever can help you. So when it comes to database, it's always an it depends situation. The most important thing is to model your data well.
Yes, if the bottleneck was database, the virtual threads won't help. If the database had some free time and the bottleneck was processing of the requests, here the virtual threads should help and should be able to increase the throughput and therefore increase the speed of the questions on the database. So, as Lukman said, it depends. But,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks both.
An engineer's favorite response to that, it depends.
It depends, yeah. Especially the kind of complex applications that end up running on Jakarta EE environments and you know the stickiness in production that they have, it depends. It really depends.
So hopefully we managed to answer that question to some extent. No, I think we did. So a really quick question here in the chat. Any improvement in startup time?
To what?
Payara startup time or in general applications?
So I'll leave Maulik to clarify that in the chat as well. So we can get back to that.
Or in Java 21 itself.
That would be my assumption, but we might need to wait for more information on that. So we'll get back to that. Yeah, in Java 21, there we go. Yeah. No answer or
I'm not aware of any significant improvement.
I guess that depends what you're running on it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, again, it depends, I guess.
Also,
yeah.
I think in practice, startup time I've never seen startup time play any significant, meaningful role in the overall serving of the product. Most of the time, there is emphasis on faster startup and all of that, but in most applications, there are certain core applications where startup is important, but I can argue that the large chunk of general purpose applications out there, startup is really insignificant. Of course, getting your server starting up fast is always good. Payara, for instance, on my machine starts up as fast as 7 seconds, 6 seconds, and I'm sure if I had a much beefier machine, it would be way faster than that. So yes, there would be some improvement in startup, but it's not something I want to spend time optimizing, because startup as in and of itself as a standalone metric is in most cases I've seen useless. It doesn't really add any business value to the delivery of products.
Yeah, thank you, Lukman. So another sort of it depends answer, but a little bit more specific. But yeah, that's true. And there's lots of conversation about startup time, but it really depends on the context. Okay, so I'll move on to the next question. How can I use sequenced collections to improve the performance of my Jakarta EE apps that work with ordered data? So up for grabs, this question.
I think this is also, it depends on the application you are writing and the objective of the application. Sequence collections are designed to solve a specific purpose. And so if your application falls within the scope of that purpose, then obviously it's just a matter of calling the API, dropping in, and then taking out. First one, last one, those should be generally faster. But again, it depends. If your application falls within the scope of that, then you are good.
For today's LJC event with Deependra Scott.
That's all right. Carry on.
Bendra's in the news,
Yeah,
apparently.
So yes, it depends. It depends.
Great. And I
The
got
the performance impact would be, or I don't know if it really would make too much of a sense of a performance impact. It's just providing you with either a standardized way of actually getting the first or last, or in the case of certain collections, it'll just be implemented for you now rather than you having to write it yourself. So if you were in the cases where you were writing it yourself and this is now implemented, it might be quicker. It depends. It is largely just around having it be a bit more unified, that there are now these extra interfaces of these methods should exist. They don't always exist. They're not all. Some of the add and remove from the end for start and end. They're not necessarily implemented because of the way that it's all structured. Otherwise you'd end up having to implement that for unmodifiable collections, which is no, don't do that. But it just makes it nicer if you no longer just have to. There will literally be a method of get first, or I can't remember the exact names of them, but get first or get last, rather than you having to try and think about, oh, how do I do this? I need to go over it. I need to find out the size of it and then pop from the end versus just get end.
Yeah. And Simon, I think he adds to the conversation. I think you'd only get an improvement if you have a very interesting way to calculate the last index. So not sure if that's a question. That's more of a opinion, I think.
I think from a
exactly what Andrew said. Yeah.
From a map usage perspective, it would be a little more. It'll improve the legibility of the code and make it more legible. But I think overall, from a performance perspective, I agree. It shouldn't. It depends, but it shouldn't have a lot of impact.
Okay, thank you. And next question, how can I use generational low pause garbage collection to reduce the amount of time that my Jakarta EE applications are paused during garbage collection?
This is the biggest one.
Someone has to take it on.
Biggest and most technical.
Might have a separate webinar just about that one. I just typed it in again because it's quite, yeah.
Yeah, so they've made improvements to it. It's been around for it's another one of those which has been around for a while. It's not just here's this new thing. It has been there for a bit, for a few releases of Java, but it's just meant to potentially be an improvement over the default default G1. I can never remember which one is. So for this one, or specifically for 21 over the previous releases, they've actually separated out. They've now put in some generations where previously the ZGC had to do it had to garbage collect everything all at once. But now they've actually got generations like the pre-existing ones where they had generations of. Now there are generations for the ZGC for the old and short-term ones, so it would potentially be quicker than it was previously. And the headline of the ZGC over the G1 is that the pause times are measured in microseconds instead of milliseconds and are meant to be ambivalent to the size of the heap. That's the tagline. I haven't personally given it a performance test or anything, and as we're fond of saying it depends. It will depend on what you're actually trying to do with your application and what environment you're on. It might be the case that it's worse. You'd have to test it and see. There is the reason that all these different garbage collectors have existed is there isn't a silver bullet. It depends on what you're doing.
Use case to use case, yeah, exactly.
I think
in the end, much
Yeah,
like
go on.
databases, no amount of optimized garbage collector will save you if you don't design your applications well. So if you are excessively creating objects, you don't close resources and all of those things, no garbage collector is going to help you. So I think most of the time when we think of optimization as developers, we think of a single silver bullet. But there's just none. It's always, and it depends. You need to measure, you need to benchmark and find where bottlenecks are and fix them. So even though these new garbage collectors are designed to take away some of the pain points of the Java runtime, in the end, optimization starts with your own code. You start from there and then benchmark to see what works for your particular application. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that if there are, say, some poses which maybe are not a problem for the application, they are more efficient and actually allow bigger throughput, although there are some micro poses. So the low pose garbage collector comes with some price, and the question is if you are more interested in the immediate answer or in the amount of issues per second, of amount of responses per second. So that's why it's configurable, and that's the difference. So it may help in if you are interested in immediate response without any gaps in the responses.
Okay.
I would like to answer the question from the Q&A. Is it better performance because virtual thread work in JVM? I'm very careful when we say that virtual threads have better performance, because as they are working now, if you compare them with platform threads, they are actually slower. The power of the virtual threads is not that they compute more. They cannot. The CPU is there, and virtual threads are always performing the platform threads are always the ones which deploy the calculation. They do the calculation always in platform threads. The virtual threads help to switch between the workload between the threads if the threads are waiting for something. So at the end, you don't need that many platform threads, say threads from the operating system of you, and you can do more work. These threads wait much less than the classical way. Then they wait in the classical way when you start a new thread for each piece of work you want to do. So therefore, it's more efficient and allows to optimize the switching between the threads. So if you have something what you calculate and your application is CPU based, is delivering calculations, virtual threads won't help because the work needs to be done, and virtual threads won't help. So there is no better performance just because of virtual threads. But if you have workload which waits frequently for something like REST calls if you have REST calls or databases or some other IO, then the virtual threads are more are optimizing the switch and use much less memory. So in
They
this
utilize the CPU more efficiently. I think it's the
it shares the CPU more efficiently. That's
yeah.
Yeah. So,
No,
so
the only way to make your CPU go faster is to overclock it.
Yeah, I did lots of samples and tests, and if you take the CPU intensive application and you use virtual threads, it's actually slower. So that's not the point, and that's the reason why they are configurable. If the programmer has to decide if he wants to run this piece of code in virtual threads or in the old way in platform threads. Technically, it is it will be flag in the manage executor service, which or manage thread factory, which will allow you to say which kinds of threads it will use.
Okay.
That's all. Thanks.
Thanks, Petra, and thanks for taking the question from the Q&A. We've got another one from Simon. How much effort do you anticipate to prepare for the upcoming disablement of dynamic agent loading?
I don't know personally too much about this, other than I don't believe it's not like removal of the feature. It's more just it's not enabled by default, similar with the encapsulation that came in with the module, the Java module system, where it's not, you can't go into them. You've just got to add opens or something to that effect. So I don't know if anybody else knows better, but I don't think there's much of, because it's not being removed. It's just potentially turned off by default. And definitely isn't a thing for 21. It's just preparing for it, not actually doing it.
Yeah, okay. I don't think anyone else.
Yeah, it's not a feature I am familiar with, so I can speak to that.
No, that's all right. Hopefully that helps to some extent. Okay, so the next question: how can I use string templates to make my Jakarta EE code more readable and maintainable?
Yeah, string templates are one of those features that I'm personally happy about, because they allow you to have some features that have been available, or this feature that has been available in other languages like Ruby strings and all that for quite a while. And it will come in handy in different scenarios. Again, it depends on the application, but one place I can think of is JSF, for instance, when you are doing web application, and I think MVC as well. It's a place you can use it to pass data around, dynamic data around, without really having to concatenate a lot of strings. So again, it depends on your use case in the application, but generally it should allow you to use strings more efficiently without needing to concatenate and create a lot of strings, or even need to use the string builder API. You can just use the string templates to get a lot of dynamic strings. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lukman. Next question, and again, keep them coming from those of you who are listening. We are hopefully getting to all of them. I think we've answered all of the audience questions as posted during this conversation. So the next one on the list, how can I use the foreign function and memory API to call code and access memory outside of the Java virtual machine in my Jakarta EE apps?
I think the foreign function API is one of those APIs I call specialized APIs that they are really not so dissimilar to a double-barreled gun. We only use it as at the uttermost end of need. So if your application interfaces with native libraries, So for instance, you are developing an AI or Internet of Things application in Java, and then you need to access some API that is only available in, say, C++ or C, then you should be able to, or you can use this. And the new API is much more compact and more importantly for me, much more readable to be able to access the native APIs in a much efficient way than the old JNI API. So it depends on the scope or the domain of your application, but it's not something that I think most general purpose applications would be using. For specialized applications, for instance, in the financial sector, where you are doing some really fast compute where every microsecond results in some money somewhere, then you could interface with native APIs. But generally, I think it's a specialized API. And we have a blog post that shows how you can use that in your application.
Yeah, you're right. It is specialized. I mean, in the context of Jakarta EE, it is, to my knowledge, not actually really a part of Jakarta EE. There is the debugging support for other languages spec, but I don't believe the actual the new API is actually making its way into any of the existing specifications. I'm not omniscient, but I don't believe it is. I can't keep track of all of them. But yes, you were right. It's quite niche and it's not replacing things. So if you were using the older APIs, the JNI or the Sun Misc safe stuff, it's not just deleting those. It is meant to just be in addition to. So it's a new API which is meant to be backwards compatible in the sense that your existing code won't just suddenly stop working. But yes, as Simon said, bear in mind, this is one of the ones which is actually in preview, as are string templates. String templates are also in preview. They're not final yet.
Okay. Great. So I've got a bit of an open question here, and I think I'll ask maybe Dipendra to go first with that one. What advice would you give to Jakarta EE devs who are looking to upgrade to Java 21? Just the general advice. I think each of you has a bit different prospect and different context.
I would honestly look at improving the code legibility, leveraging all the newer capabilities that Java 21 provides, more than looking at it from a pure performance perspective. So I would definitely take advantages of, let's say, the nested pattern matching capabilities. Then you've got string templating, which is again a very useful thing. So I've seen code where instead of using the Java JSON, a lot of times a simple string is used, with a builder, and it's just returned dynamically. So in all those scenarios, the code legibility takes a hit, and a lot of times with these newer capabilities, it'll make it much more readable and maintainable. Of course, the more readable the code becomes, the more apparent bugs can be, and the more manageable the code becomes. So that's my general advice from a Java 21 perspective. Like, these are the low-hanging fruits that you can take advantage of right away.
Great, thank you, Dee. Andrew, what advice would you give in general terms? What's most important in your view?
I think you kind of covered it. Yeah, look at using some of the nicer bits to make your to improve your code, so it's not so when. I mean, it's always the case. You know what your own code does, but when you give it to somebody else, they'll go, "What on earth? Why have you got like 9 indented levels?" So look at using those those newer features around improving the readability of your code. Be aware that yes, some bits are in preview. A lot of the articles and blogs you see tend to always either put that as a small throwaway that things are in preview because it's look new shiny, but it may not be final yet. It's there as a preview. But then also just be aware that things do change. So I don't know if I had any wisdom there, but
Thank you, Andrew. Lukman, anything to add?
Yeah, as developers, we are always eager to use the latest and greatest, but for your own side project, for your own pet project, why not? But in production environment, you want to be careful, especially like Andrew mentioned, you want to be aware of things that are in preview, because preview is just that, preview. You could wake up tomorrow and they are out in the next release, and then you find out that you have to do a lot of scrambling to catch up, to refactor and all that. So yeah, a number of the features for me, the most important ones are the ones that improve code readability, because you'll be reading code much more than you'll be writing code. And you can't really write better code if you don't read. You cannot read existing code, because most of the time you wouldn't start from scratch. You would always go, there would be code that you need to fall into and add value to it. So the syntactic parts that make it make code much more readable are the parts that I'm very much happy about, and they are the parts that I would be adopting in code. Yeah.
Thanks, Lukman. And Petr, do you have anything else to add?
Yes. Of course, it's necessary to be careful. Actually, it will take the Jakarta servers sometimes to run on Java EE 21, Java 21, and it will take a bit more time to bring the advantages of it.
Yes.
But when it will happen, I think it's definitely worth trying these things, and the development inside the JDK and the speed of the execution and these under the hood things are interesting, and maybe playing with the garbage collectors is worth trying if this can improve the performance of the application. From the syntax point of view, the change of the syntax, the biggest thing I have experienced myself are the what's the name? The records. This is something very addictive. Once you start using it, you realize that when people were talking about still forgetting things, the Lombok library, it's actually replacing Lombok. You don't need to write getters. You don't need to annotate class for the default constructors, for the default hash, for the default toString. It's all included in it, and you just write public record, put the list of fields, and you are done. It's immutable thing, and once you start using it for small things, you realize that you stopped writing the dirty code with public fields and such ugly things. It improves your style very much. So this is my favorite thing. I'm waiting when we will start using Java, at least 17, preferably 21 for Payara itself, because this is nice improvement. That's probably all.
Okay, great. Thank you, Petr. I don't see any more questions from the audience. So I think we are 10 to an hour, so we've already been talking for about 50 minutes. That's quite a lot of information I think we've covered. Still, if any of you have any more questions, then please do post them. We still have a couple of minutes. What I would like to do now as well, in a minute, I will launch a really quick poll, which is basically about what you've managed to learn from this webinar. It's one question, 3 answers to choose from. So if you could please pick your answer, that would be very useful for us. That's feedback for us on how we can improve on running those events. So I'll launch it now and you should see it, and I'll keep it open for about a minute for you to answer, and yeah, that would be very useful.
I remembered a thing about actually updating to 21 as well. If you're using the security manager, that is going. That's actually probably the thing that I would be aware of. Obviously, things changed, and yes, don't use the preview stuff. But yeah, security manager is going away. Be aware if you happened to use that, in my opinion, horribly verbose thing.
Is it replaced with anything, or it's just going?
I think it's largely just going. In Jakarta EE, they're looking at essentially a lot of the EE specifications for Jakarta EE 11 are actually updating themselves essentially for the removal of the security manager. And then I can never remember which specific one it would be. One of the security ones, either security authentication or authorization, whichever one it would apply to. They are actually having to essentially come up with their own new solution for the fact that the security manager is gone now, because they were obviously quite tied into it. And so yes, they're coming up with a new thing. I think it's a similarly named. I think it's called like the policy class or something to that effect. I'd have to look it up again.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. That was I think quite useful. If anything comes up to your mind again, do please shout. We're still here for a few more minutes, and I'll quickly share my screen as well, and just want to, for those of you who might be new to Payara itself, I just wanted to highlight that we have a couple of trials, free trials going on at the moment that you can access. If you go to payara.fish and yeah, hopefully you can see my screen. Yeah, there you go. And you click try free at the top. You can try Payara Cloud for 15 days. This is a limited time trial, which is why I'm highlighting this to you, because it's it will not be open forever. So this is temporary, and we basically offer you to sign up for Payara Cloud for 15 days trial for free. You can explore, you can run your Jakarta EE apps on Payara Cloud. So it's very easily accessible through this link. You just have to fill in a form and you're in. There's a you can see the demo how this works as well, how the trial sign up works, and you can also find more information about Payara Cloud on our website in Payara Cloud tab. And also, I know a lot of you are regularly attending our events, which is great, and we really appreciate that you are coming back, and hopefully you find what we are covering, our topics, useful and important. So the next webinar, we already have this already on our calendar. Next webinar is next week. If you want to join, it's going to be about the Apache CouchDB, and NoSQL database with Lukman. So again, we'll be demoing. It's going to be a very much developer focused event. So if you want to join us for this next one, same time next week, please go to our events page or to our blog, and you can find the registration link there. So yeah, so I think that's all from me. I'll quickly check if we have any more questions. I can't see any more questions. So I'll just a reminder that this webinar is recorded. If you want to revisit any of the questions, you can come back to the recording. If you do have any more questions after this, something comes to your mind, then you can always come to our website, to our blog. And I also encourage you to subscribe to the blog at blog.payara.fish. Just a simple sign up with an email address, and you will be receiving a frequency. You pick frequency, how often you want to receive the updates, and you will be receiving our technical articles written by those panelists that you can see here and other people as well. So there's a vast amount of information about Jakarta EE and Payara in there. So I definitely recommend you to sign up. And yeah, I think that's all for today. The poll is still open, so if you still want to answer, then please do. You should see it at the bottom of your screen. And I want to say a big thank you to Andrew, Pet, Dipendra, and Lukman for this conversation today. I hope everyone found it at least somewhat useful, as our poll says. And yeah, I hope to see you next time at the next event. And if you have any suggestions for any new topics that we should cover, then please message us, social media, message us at info@payara.fish, contact forms, however you prefer, comments on our socials, comments on our blogs. We read it all. We get the feedback from all of these places. So we appreciate you attending today, and thank you very much, and see you next time. Thank you to all the panelists again. Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Bye.